All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the stream. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. We are streaming over on Twitch and YouTube, simulcasting. For those of you who are new here, we are developing a game engine completely from scratch using C and using Vulkan as our initial rendering backend. Before we jump into tonight's stuff, I want to take just a quick second and thank the supporters of the channel listed here on the screen, beginning with our partners. Those are the highest tier of subscription over on YouTube memberships and Patreon. They are Gebi Bashir and Gerboles Inc. I would also like to thank all the other supporters listed here on the screen. They are the other tiers of subscription over on Patreon, YouTube memberships, as well as Twitch subscriptions. So thank you very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. And I hope it goes without saying that I appreciate each and every one of you viewers, whether you're over on the Twitch side or on the YouTube side. I appreciate having you guys here very much. So thank you for being here. Thank you for following along. I appreciate you guys. Okay, so where we left off last night was we basically had enhanced our shader system a little bit, where we had the ability to hot reload shaders. And what that basically means is that we could make some changes here to the shader itself while the engine was running, and then when we save the file, the engine would actually pick that up and reload the shader complete with the changes. Now, obviously, there are limits as to what that can actually be used for. If the input layout changes too much, for example, you may not be able to hot reload that successfully, at least not yet. But for something like tweaking parameters and stuff, it's totally fine for that, right? So we did that. We also implemented a bit of a shadow fade so that once the shadows reach a certain point, they can go ahead and smoothly fade out instead of just kind of cutting off at a certain point in the distance, right? So those are the things that we put in place, but we only put those in place on the actual terrain shader. So we need to put those in place on the PBR shader as well. There's a couple small things I want to do in addition to that, and then we're going to actually move on to enhancing our dev console a little bit and making it a little bit more useful. Because some of these things would have been a heck of a lot easier to test, if we had console commands that we can enter to test some of this stuff. So that's what we're going to take a look at doing tonight, and just adding a little bit of functionality to that so that we can actually use that a little bit more effectively to change stuff around, right? Taman, good to see you. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. Episode 170, yeah, exactly. I felt the same way as typing it in. And it was funny to type in 169 yesterday too. That was kind of humorous, but yeah, 170. We're going to be pushing 200 here before too much longer, right? So yeah, we've probably accomplished about, I would say 2/3 that number in terms of features that we put in and different things that we've talked about. It's been a lot. Apotham, good to see you. Hello. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you. All right. So I guess the first order of business is we are going to have to edit the PBR shaders. So I think what I'm going to do is pull up the PBR shader config. We need to update that first. And thankfully our directional light updates have already happened on the code side, so we should only really have to actually fix this stuff here. In this case, though, let's see. We have our directional light here, and in this case, it's a instance level. We had struct 32 here. This now needs to be struct 48 because we've got that extra 16 bytes of data here, right? So we have that, and then in the PBR fragment shader, we basically can just take this and add it here. It's more or less going to be the same thing in both cases. And so we have that there, and then while I have that open, I'm actually going to open the PBR vertex shader. And let's see, do we actually use the instance level in here? I don't actually know if we do. We might not have to make that change on this side. No, we don't. Okay, perfect. So we only really need to make that change on this side in this particular shader. So let's see, we have, I think all of this stuff, if I remember, was kind of concentrated in one spot. So it should really just be all of this right here, which actually, yeah, I feel like, I suppose I could split that out into a function, right? But whatever, I'm just going to copy it over for now. So let's take this, and we'll move over to here, and we'll do shadow. I think it was shadow equals, right? Here we go. So after we calculate the shadow, that is where we're going to want to put everything in. So we have our fade start, our fade distance in there. Yeah, and it should be the exact same thing that sort of just drops into place. So I believe that's actually all we need to do for that. One check I am going to do, well, actually, no. Yeah, I think we made all of the code changes last night. So we actually should just be able to run this. So let's go ahead and run. Okay, what did I foobar? Let's see. Oh, I know what it is. I copy-pasted this logic, but it's using the global UBO instead of the... what do we call it? I think it was... Global Uniform Object Instance UBO is what we need. So this should be Instance UBO, Instance UBO. Okay, that makes sense. Let's go ahead and try that again. Okay, that looks pretty good. So we'll load this up, and we should see that same sort of fade occurring with this stuff now. So let's see. Our shadow cascades are a little bit strange with that, but it's a little hard to tell, to be honest. Maybe we'll do it from... We should be able to do it from here. There it is. You can see it fade upwards, right? If you look right there, you can kind of see it. Right? So that works. That was nice and easy to knock out. All right. I feel like that old Exhibit Yo Dog meme. I'm refactoring my own code while watching someone refactor their code. That's awesome. I love it. That's one of my favorite memes over the years, to be honest. It's an oldie, but a goodie. Blank Q, hello, arrived from YouTube. Awesome. Good to see you. Welcome. Welcome to the stream. Let's check the YouTube side. Let's see. April E, why do you pass both projection and view matrices as a uniform instead of multiplying them on the CPU? Right now, just because I don't know if I'm going to need them separate at any point. When I make a optimization pass, I may very well pre-multiply those things so that I don't have to do it all the time. But for right now, while I'm still kind of building stuff out, adding features and stuff like that, I just wanted to, keep them separate in case I need them separate, right? And there may be something I need them separate for, there may not be. But it's an easy enough configuration change to make to do that later. Here to drop a like. I appreciate that, Max. Thank you. Welcome to the stream, by the way. Yeah, so while we're in progress with a lot of things, you're going to see a lot of things like, why are we doing it this way, right? And it's generally because the way that I work is I kind of get things working first, kind kind of the brute force method, right? Get it working. And then when I'm finished adding features, I'll go back and do like a cleanup pass, and then I'll do an optimization pass. And I just kind of tackle those things in different stages, because if you try to do it all at once, that's a great way to not really accomplish anything and have non-working code, at least in my experience. So yeah, I like to get it working, commit, do a cleanup pass, commit, and then do a a performance pass. And it's not necessarily even limited to one pass for each of those things, right? But yeah, that's more or less the style of work that I do. Another thing that we're going to need to implement soon, because we have lots of shared and repeated code, is shader includes. We don't have that right now, but if we look at these two shaders, these are different, but they're very alike in a lot of ways, right? So at some point we're going to need to do that, but that's on a cleanup pass, right? All right, so the thing I wanted to talk about tonight was going to be enhancing our console a little bit. So it'd be nice to be able to, if I run this, I'll kind of show you guys what I mean when I say the console, because you might not have seen it, because I don't use it that much, even though I probably should. So we have, if I hit the tilde key, we have this little console that pops up. And there's a text box in here that I can use to highlight text and edit it, whatever. I've got some sample text in there, and I can enter commands in here, right? And then if the command exists, it'll do it. Otherwise, it'll bleat that it doesn't exist, right? And so I think we should make more use of this, because it would be nice to be able to say, something like scene dot directional, which actually the dot doesn't actually work, so I'll have to fix that. Directional light, say, and see, there's another issue with it too. When I hit the G key, it actually hit the hotkey setting for my gizmo. So I'm going to have to fix that as well. So there's a couple of issues there that we've got to fix, right? But I want to make this console a little bit more useful so that we can actually, enter commands in here and actually be able to manipulate things without having to type the sort of set commands that we've used. So my thought process is that we'll have a series of essentially named objects that exist in the context of a console that'll be associated with a pointer to something. And whenever that thing is either created or destroyed, the console will be notified of that. And then we can tweak the properties of that are registered with the console accordingly. And all of these things should be available within the core API of the engine, so that way we can very easily do that. And the power behind that is our debug console here is just one method of actually inputting commands. Our UI system will also eventually be hooked up to that, so we can actually put string commands behind button clicks and things like that to actually input these things, right? And then we'll be able to do things like get an object by ID or get an object by name, and then tweak properties of that object, things like that, right? So that's kind of what I'm looking to implement, because that type of functionality is going to be necessary. So more or less, that's kind of the goal for tonight. I don't think we're going to complete it, but I'd like to get at least a start on it. Looks like we also have an issue with shutdown not waiting until the current frame is finished rendering, judging by these errors. So we should probably expose that as well. So we have a couple things to do. Let's actually tackle that first, right? So let's go to the Vulkan backend, and I'll go all the way to the bottom. And let's say we'll do a return type of void, and we'll call this Vulkan renderer wait for idle. right? And this is literally just going to be a pass-through to the Vulkan command wait for idle. And we're just going to use this in circumstances where we know we need to wait for the device to be idle to do something like shutdown, right? Obviously, we don't want to do this a lot, but in this case, I think that's fine. So this is going to need the renderer plugin. So we'll need that. But I think that's actually all we're going to need. So we can then say if plugin, and honestly the plugin should always be there, but plugin dot internal context, which is going to be castable or cold castable to a Vulkan context. Right, so that's how we'll get our context, because we're going to need that to get the device. And we'll do vk device wait idle, right? Which is obviously like a very, very heavy thing. You're not going to want to just do this anywhere, right? But we do need to do it right before we shut down the renderer. So we want to be able to at least trigger this from the front end potentially. So vk wait idle, I think, just takes the device. Yep, it does. So that'll just take the address of context device, and then logical device, right? Why is this bleating? Oh, I guess I don't need the address of it. It's already a pointer. Right. Okay. And I think this is... It does return a VK result. So I guess if we fail to do that, we can bleat about it. Yeah, we'll just do a VK check on that, honestly. VK check. Right, and we'll just assert if it fails. And that's really it. So we'll take this, go to backend H all the way to the bottom. Snip this right in there. Right, and then we'll take this and we'll go over to the renderer types, and we'll expose this to the front end. So let's do plugin. Go down here to the bottom. Snag this in there. And we'll just call this wait for idle. All right, that'll be our function pointer there. For the front end to use, we'll need a struct here. Waits for the renderer backend to be completely idle of work before returning. Note, this incurs a lot of overhead / waits and should be used sparingly. Okay. Oh, wrong parenthesis here. I was like, what did I type wrong? Okay. So we've got that. We'll slam this on the front end as well. So we'll go all the way to the bottom of the front end. Oh, you know what? I want the H file actually first. Go all the way down here to the bottom of this. Put that in here. We will export it. right? We'll go back to the C file. Right, and we'll basically just do this to get the plugin, render state rather, and then we'll do state pointer plugin. Yeah, why is that not? Why is that not picking that up? Should be state pointer plugin. Okay. And then we'll do wait for idle, passing the address of state pointer. Plugin. What do I have going on here? Expected. Oh, because this is still a function pointer. That's why. Render wait for idle, which means it's also going to be incorrect on the H file. Oops. Wait for idle. There. Okay. So we should be good on that front. And then we'll need to go to, let's see, how do we want to do this? I think the renderer front end shutdown is probably where we're going to want to do this. So you render buffer destroy. So realistically, we probably ought to do it here. Renderer wait for idle. Oh, does the front end function have this too? It shouldn't. It should just be void. Should just be that, right? Yeah, it does. Front end. Void. Right. There. Okay. So hopefully that resolves that issue. All right. Let's see. Off topic, but can I ask what data structure you're using to store terrain chunks in? Is it like a tree? No, not yet. So right now it's literally just an array of chunks. And we're just, we don't have a tree structure yet in our scene. Eventually what we're going to do is we're going to have a quad tree that we use to determine what chunks of the terrain get rendered at what LOD. And we'll do that. Right now we're just brute force arraying it, right? Just looping through the array and checking its distance from the camera. So you basically have the terrain structure and then you have an array of chunk structures within that, and we're just looping through it. That is going to be changed to use a quad tree as soon as we get that implementation complete. But in terms of, you know, I'm just looking to actually get more features in here for now, and I'm going to go back and do some of that stuff in an optimization pass. I actually do have quad trees and oct trees on the to-do list of things to do. So, Singy, hello, good to see you. Let's see. Hey, I'm happy to see the progress today. I'm excited. Hopefully, I fell asleep during this Bob Ross Zen session. That's funny. Sick for 8 days. Jeez. I hope you get better soon. That's rough, man. 8 days being sick. That's really rough. Must have been a really bad one. I hope you get better soon. I hope you feel better. definitely get some rest. Okay, so we've got that sorted. I think that's going to solve our shutdown issue. The problem is it's a bit of a Heisenbug. It only happens every once in a while if I happen to exit mid-frame. So I guess we could do a quick test on it, right? And we'll just build. And since I changed render types, which is shared across a lot of stuff, that's why you have a lot of things rebuilding. Henkels, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome. Okay, so we built. Let's go ahead and run the thing. Right, and we will go ahead and... Oh, it does not look like it stopped the issue. Let's see. Why not, is my question. Oh, I know why. Because we didn't assign the function pointer. Derp. Missed a step. So we need to look at render plugin main C. Go to the bottom of this. And we need to add out plugin. Wait for idle equals Vulkan renderer wait for idle. Right? And build. I almost always forget to do that. I might actually... macro that at some point. Right? Instead of having all of this, all of these different functions, I might actually just macro it. That would require me changing the names of some of the functions to be consistent, right? Because the Vulkan renderer versions are just should be Vulkan renderer, and then underscore whatever this is. So some of them are still Vulkan renderer backend, which is like a legacy thing, and then some of them are just named weird things. So eventually I should probably fix that, but it's not going to be a tonight problem. All right, so let's try this one more time. So we load this up, and then we'll escape. And it looks like it's still killing it for some reason. So we're destroying a frame buffer. Oh, you know what? That's probably the scene being unloaded, actually. That's probably exactly what that is. Okay. So it's good that we're doing that on the renderer shutdown, but we should also do in the scene. Is it going to be... I'm trying to think if we should actually, if it actually does need to happen there. Let's see, it's destroying the skybox frame buffer. This is what I'm looking at right here. We're gonna have ads in a second, so I'm gonna have to break here in a second. Maybe name your Vulkan objects so their names appear on the validation layer. Yeah, I do a lot of that actually. So they're not all named, but I'd say probably 80% of stuff is, right? So that's actually, that's what I've done here. That's how I know it's the skybox frame buffer, for example. And what I did in that case was I said, okay, well this belongs to a render pass, right? And then what render pass it belongs to, and then it's a frame buffer of this dimension. Right, so I just tried to include as much data in the name as I could so that I know where it's coming from. So it's that's basically the skybox render pass getting destroyed, which technically means it's a render graph issue. We have ads. So I like to pause ads whenever they come up on Twitch. I know on the YouTube side it works a little bit differently, but on the Twitch side we are served ads once every 30 minutes for 90 seconds. So for those of you who are new to the stream here, I like to pause the stream whenever we get ads so that nobody misses any content. And so it's just a little bit of time, right? It doesn't take too long for that to pass through, but you know, it's much better than having, you know, things being explained on a little tiny screen behind some ads, right, that you can't hear. So I like to pause the stream for that, and it gives me a chance to hydrate as well, which is always a good thing. It's like commercials when you're watching TV too, if you have to go to the bathroom, right? It's not always a bad thing. All right, so we got about 20 seconds left on ads, and then we will continue. Almost done with ads. All right, cool. Ads are dead. So, yeah, I just like to pause the stream for ads, just so that nobody misses anything, right? Okay, so these are all specifically destruction of render pass and frame buffers, which are part of a render pass, right? So it looks like the render pass, for some reason, itself isn't named. Yeah, it's not named because this would contain the name. So I'll have to fix that. I guess we didn't add that. All submitted commands that refer to the render pass must have completed execution. So I'm thinking what that means is when we destroy the render graph, that's actually what we need to sort of wait on before that can actually proceed. So in the render graph, where we destroy, we go through here and destroy each one of these render targets, right? And the pass itself. So I'm thinking right here is where we do that, right? Before we actually destroy the render graph at all, we wait until the device is idle to ensure that nothing is running while we're trying to destroy this, right? So we'll say render wait for idle. I'm actually surprised that hasn't come up before. All right, so that's built. Let's run this. All right, so here we have the application. Escape. Bam, problem solved. Okay, so that's an example of where you'd want to use that, right? But you definitely don't want to use that to synchronize like geometry uploads or something like that, right? That'd be terrible. But there are certain circumstances, usually on shutdown, where you'd want that kind of functionality. Okay, so we've got that. Let me check on render passes real quick. So that's going to be in the Vulkan backend. And we want render pass create. I could have swore that we had names being generated for this, but maybe not. Attachment references. Probably should have just skipped to the end of the function. Okay, so here we go. VK create render pass. No, we're not doing it. Okay. So debug object name, context, VK object type render pass. The object handle is going to be internal data handle, and the name that we're going to use is going to be, let's see, did we... Yeah, I think we actually have either the render pass itself or the config has a name. So let's use that. So we'll do out render pass name. There we go. Right. And that's return type void, so we don't even need to check to see if it's successful. So at least if we get more errors about that, we'll have a name there. But yeah, we did have the functionality to do that, and I've been spot adding them whenever I see that something's missing it like that. So yeah. Oh, the name was behind the... Oh yeah, the log was probably behind the camera over here and down here, wasn't it? Yeah, I see what you mean. Yep. Sorry about that. It's a little hard to see. I wish I could come up with a way to like block off this section of the screen while I'm working so that I can tell what the camera's blocking, what it's not. I try to be cognizant of it, but I don't always get it right. All right. So with that said, that issue is solved. We do need to solve a couple problems with the debug console. Athena, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. So let's just close out this buffer. We don't need to. Let me go to debug console. We'll start there. And then entry, I think is what I called the text box. Debug console entry text box. Here we go. We had some really long text in there to test scrolling back and forth and deleting text and stuff in there, and I just never got rid of it, right? So we can, we can get rid of that. Right, we'll just default it to an empty string. That way we're all set to enter commands into it, right? So that's just a minor thing there. The other thing that I need to think about is that key binding issue that we ran into. So we have our game keybinds, where we have key G in here somewhere. I thought. Maybe it's in testbed main. Yeah, it is. Okay. Oh, because it was just the editor gizmo, which is kind of a test thing, right? That's actually probably why that's happening, because we did it this way and not through an official key binding, right? So we should probably actually change this to work with work the key binding way. So let's actually open up game keybinds, and let's see. I think this is the only one that we have. We have gizmo orientation. So I guess G for gizmo orientation just loops through it for what it looks like. So that's what I'm going to just move over to here. So the difference between what we're doing with key bindings and what we're doing over here on the right side is here we're just handling the raw event itself, versus over on this side we actually have a key binding that's part of a key map. And the key maps, for those of you who haven't seen that episode, are basically maps of keyboard inputs that can be stacked. They go into a key map stack, and you can push and pop off of that stack. And so the idea is that in most cases, you generally want to block the inputs of a key map that is not the top on that stack. And it very quickly allows you to change out sets of key bindings just by pushing different key bindings onto that stack. And so actually just moving this over there will probably be enough to change that. Let's see. Editor gizmo orientation gets. The only question that I have about this, state gizmo. We can get the state, which is the game instance. So we should actually be good on that as long as the user data that we pass is the actual application, right? So we're basically going to more or less use a copy of this guy, more or less. So let's see. I'm going to move to the bottom of all of these. Oh, wait a minute. Game on set gizmo mode. Oh, right. This is okay. So we're doing half of it in a key map and half of it not. That's neat. Let's fix that. So let's call this game on gizmo scope orientation set. So all of this stuff will be the same, except for these two lines. Right, so what we want to do is grab all of this, go over here, plop that in. Right, yeah, that should do it. Right, and then I'm going to take a copy of that, and then game on set gizmo mode. Here we go. I'm going to put these key bindings kind of next to this. So, set gizmo mode. Okay, let's put this here, just for reference, right? And we're going to duplicate this line. And on this guy, we're going to say, oops, paste that there, change the key to, whoops, G, key map bind type press, no modifier. Okay, and that should be what we need. So over here, I can kill this, and that should be good enough. Should be good enough. The other thing I wanted to kill was this. We had this temporary hot reload stuff in here. Just to test shader reloading. We don't actually need this anymore. So we can do away with that and reactivate this. Tammin, thank you for the resub for 2 months. I really appreciate that. Thank you for the support. That really means a lot to me, especially now. So that support really helps me out. Thank you. Just put a sticky note on your monitor. You know what, Max? You're not wrong. It's actually freaking genius. Do I have a sticky note? Why didn't I think of that? I was like trying to like overcomplicate the crap out of it, right? And sometimes low tech is best. Honestly. Let me see if I can figure out exactly where that is, right? So the corner of it's about there. That's a brilliant suggestion. That's exactly what I just did. Sticky note on the monitor just to remind me not to code down there. I love it. And we'll see how long the sticky note stays on there because it's a little dubious. It's acting like it wants to come off, but we'll try it. Okay, so we've solved that issue. I don't think there's any other key bindings in here. Let's go ahead and search, right? These are just generic key pressed and released, which we don't actually have anything in there. Unsubscriptions. Yeah, that's it. That's the only one we have that way. Okay. So, I'm actually going to... I'm going to build this and test that real quick, because if that does actually work, I'm just going to nuke this section of code. You forgot you had a Prime sub? Yeah, I always forget about that too. I actually don't even know how much... I'm not sure who I have mine set to use on, actually. I don't know if you can tell that. What is unused variable state? Line 239. Okay. 239. Oh, it's probably talking about this 239. Okay. That does make sense that that's unused. I'm really tempted to just get rid of that altogether, to be completely honest. Because that's game on key, right? And I think game on key is handling both press and release. And since I have this key map stuff, I really don't think I need that anymore. So maybe I'll just do away with it. Yeah, that's literally all it's used for, and it's actually kind of not doing anything now. So you know what? I'm going to nuke the whole freaking thing. Heck with it. We don't need those things, right? So we can get rid of those. Don't need them. Oh, did I save the... I don't think I wrote the file. Oh, I must have. Okay. Yep, okay. All right, so let me launch this real quick and see if there was anything else that was kind of a quick hit fix that I want to put into place. So we open this. We have stuff in here now. Oh, that's right. The dot didn't work. I think the character set for this was really limited. Because I only wanted to allow certain characters in the dev console. Which I suppose I could fix at one point, but yeah. All right. Attempting to free already freed block of memory at offset. That's interesting. That's one I haven't seen before, so I wonder what's causing that. This might be a bug fix night more than anything, to be completely honest. All right, so I think what we need to look at is actually in... Was it in the... No, I think it's in the text box of the standard UI. I think. It's been a bit since I've written this, so I have to just sort of refresh my memory a little bit here. Here's the creation of it. Is it in here? These are the subcontrols. The highlight box. So this might be... Here it is. forgot how branchy this is. This is probably something that's in need of a dire refactor, to be honest. So this is all key navigation or cursor navigation. Which honestly, the input aspect of it probably ought to be tied to a key map that we can push and pop on our input system. I don't know if I want to refactor all of that tonight, though. Okay, so we do A through Z and 0 through 9 as is. Right, and then if we have Shift, that handles all the keys up here, which is only for a US keyboard. That's kind of poopy too. So what we probably need to think about at some point, and I don't think I'm going to think about that tonight, but we probably need to think about different keyboard layouts and what happens when you hit those keys, right? Because every keyboard layout is not going to have this. Like I have this in here as a US standard keyboard layout. So like a German keyboard's not going to have the same things. So that's definitely a to-do. So we have this space, the minus and the equal in there as well. I guess we just add the dot for now, right? And maybe a comma, slash, question mark, space, that kind of stuff. It's also part of the internationalization we were discussing on yesterday's stream. Exactly, yeah. So this is going to be one of those areas that I'm going to have to think about how I want to attack. As far as like swapping out strings and stuff for internationalization, that's actually pretty easy. And I already know how I'm going to tackle that. This is a different story, though. All right, so you know what? I don't think I have... I don't think I actually have an item for that. So there's actually a couple items, right? I18N, which is basically shorthand for internationalization. Slash keyboard layouts. All right, so we have it. We have that aspect of internationalization, but there's also, and I don't think we have this in here. This is kind of a general thing. Maybe I should put this towards the top, right around where strings are. Do I even have strings in here? Yeah, okay, we could put it here. So let's do I18N strings. Right, and at least it's in there in the to-do. Let's see. Going back to programming on your engine? Awesome. Yeah, good luck. You're kind of tired of doing front-end stuff for the editor, to be honest. Yeah, that's tiresome stuff after a while, for sure. When we tackle that here, that's going to be a long process, especially since we're building all the UI controls ourselves. I'm both looking forward to it and not looking forward to it, to be honest. All right. Let's see. So, what we were doing over here is I'm just going to hack this in right here for right now. Case, key, was it period? Period key, yeah. And in this case, it's going to be char code equals shift held. Okay, and if we hold shift, we want that. Otherwise, we want that. Right, and then case, key, comma. We want commas as well. Char code equals shift held, right? So if shift is held on that, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll do comma. Did we? I could have swore that we did question mark support in here already, but maybe not. Apparently not. Okay. And also, I don't think this is going to take... no, that should actually be fine. Okay. So break, and then case, key. What did I do for this? Slash? It wasn't slash. It's not question mark. What the heck did I... Do I have a key for that? Nope. Key slash. Why didn't my IntelliSense give me that? Okay. Now it comes up. Okay. Character code. Shift held. So if shift held, we want a question mark. Otherwise, we want a /. All right, so that should give us most of what we need for now. You're using a pre-existing UI. Gotta love WPF, right? Right? Yeah. You know, honestly, I liked the idea behind WPF. The implementation, however, leaves a lot to be desired. And I'm also not a huge fan of having the binding pattern forced upon me. Like, I don't like the type of binding that it uses. It's just annoying. I'm not a fan. I've used WPF. I actually used WPF a number of years ago to make an editor, and I vowed to never do it again. I used it to make an OpenGL editor, which was a lot more difficult than you might think, given that it was actually written to support DirectX. Okay, so let's build this and see if those new characters work. I'm guessing I just didn't build them in at the time because I didn't think about it. All right. So we have comma, period, slash. What is that? Less than bracket, greater than bracket, and question mark. Okay, so those all work. Sweet. All right, so the point that I was trying to get to is I'd like to do like scene dot get object, right? Oh, we don't have the quote key. That's another one that's missing. Okay, but then it would be like name or something like that, right? That's eventually what I want to do. Imagine you used window hosting to manage it. How did I do that? I don't remember, to be completely honest. I remember it was like a dirty hack, though, whatever it was that I did to get it working. It was gross. Okay, this is going to annoy me. I'm going to have to fix that too. But, all right, so we have two more to add. Case, key, quote, character code equals shift held. In that case, it's going to be the double quotes. Otherwise, it's going to be the single quotes. Obviously, we have an escape sequence here. Okay. Oh, we have ads. So yeah, we just to let you guys know, for those of you who are new to the stream, on Twitch we're given ads every 30 minutes for 90 seconds. So I like to just pause the stream whenever that comes up so that we don't have people missing content, right? So it's only 90 seconds. It's not that bad. But that way, you know, I'm not explaining something behind the ad screen that people can't see or hear. Let's see. From like, I do see your question over there on YouTube. I will definitely give you the update on that in a second. Let me go ahead and just grab some hydration real quick. Got about 25 seconds left on ads, and then we're done. All right, and I think, yep, ads are dead. Cool. All right, so from Lake's question over on YouTube, it says, to do rip out the defines h, strings, logging, etc. into a separate core foundation lib. What you're talking about must be this guy right here, right? Which this is going to be a pretty major to do, actually. And so this is one I actually kind of want to tackle soonish along with this one. But the engine here, the idea here is currently, let me actually split this into a couple lines. You know what, let me just kill that for a second. So the idea here is that the way our code is structured right now is we have this engine and then we have this core stuff, right? And this core stuff contains things like our asserts, our let's see, things like identifier, our clock, mutexes, threads, our logger. All of our types are also included in the engine, right? So that's in defines, right? That includes like all of this stuff that we use throughout the code base. And so in order to use any of that stuff right now, we have to include the engine library. But the engine library has a whole bunch of other stuff in it, right? So it has these containers, which probably would also be useful elsewhere. But it has audio, it has renderer stuff in it. It has platform code in it. It's got all of our various systems that we've kind of stood up, and various things like that, right? And so I got thinking, like, a lot of our external libraries, like tools, for example, could really make use of some of these core items and things like these containers. But we don't necessarily want to have to pull in the entire engine all the time for that, because it's not really necessary, right? Memory is another one that we could use, right? This dynamic allocator and our linear allocator, or our memory system, right? And so versus, you know, pulling in the entire engine, I'm thinking of actually splitting out some of those things into a either core or a foundation type of library. I haven't really decided on a naming scheme yet, but the idea there would be that it contains things that are more broad spectrum than even the engine itself. That the engine itself would actually use those things, but you know, maybe our external tool set that doesn't need the entire engine could also use those things, right? Our math would be another example of something that could go over there. And so it's just a thing that I'm thinking about doing in terms of separation of concerns, right? So I think that's kind of what we're wanting to do there on that. And then the splitting off of the platform layers is another thing that I'm thinking probably ought to not be in this core engine, right? Because we have we have our Linux, our Mac OS, and our Win32 here, right? And basically those are all just if-def'd out. And it might be nice to have the platform code actually separated out, where we only build, the Windows platform library on Windows. We only build the Mac OS platform library on Mac OS, and we only build the Linux one on Linux. And then for any shared code between those, we maybe just roll those into the platform itself, right? So that's kind of the idea behind that. I haven't really decided how I'm going to execute it yet, but I put it into here as a to-do so that I don't lose track of it. Let's see, Eduardo over on the YouTube side. Hey, I just want to let you know that your content is great. Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. I really appreciate that kind of feedback. Recently started to get interested in game development, and it's amazing to see everything you're capable of doing. Thank you. So I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you. So yeah, it's obviously things that I've been learning how to do over the years, right? But also doing it in this format has also taught me a lot of things as well, right? So it's also a learning experience for me as well. Because it's one thing when you're sort of deving it on your own off camera, on your own, but when you have to explain it, you have to have a whole other level of understanding for things, right? So it's actually boosted my understanding of a lot of things working on this as well. So, but yeah, I'm glad you're finding it useful. That's awesome. Okay. So, text box. Where were we on this? So we had the key quote. I don't think we have semicolon in here. Nope. All right, so we better go ahead and add that too. So case key semicolon. And then character code equals shift held. And in that case, it's going to be the colon. Otherwise, it's going to be the, oops, that needs to be in single quotes. Colon. Otherwise, it's going to be the semicolon. Right. I don't suspect we'll need a lot of those, but those characters technically could be part of a name, so we should probably support them. Let's see. I think, just looking at my keyboard here, that should cover most of it. Did we include plus and minus in here? I can't imagine we'd need that, but I suppose it might be nice if we had the ability to subtract things in the console as well, because we want to make the console eventually pretty useful, right? And when I say the console, I don't just mean the console that drops down, right? I mean the actual command processor behind the scenes that handles all this stuff, right? So let's do key minus. So character code equals shift held, right? And that's going to be an underscore. Yeah, we are going to need underscores. That's an important one. Otherwise, it'll be minus. And again, this is US keyboard layout, so eventually our internationalization pass, we're going to have to tighten this up and change how it works. Probably what we'll do is separate keys out into like commands that each one runs internally within a key map. And then based on the key that you press, we could set up different maps for different keyboard layouts and things like that. So we need the... Is it going to be the plus? No, it's going to be equals. Key equal. So that character code is going to be shift held. And in that case, that will give us the plus. Otherwise, it will give us the equal sign. I never understood why they made that backwards, right? Key minus and key equal are the same thing. What? That doesn't... Why can't I peek the definition of that? Key equal is 0xbb. Those aren't the same case. What is it talking about? And there's only one instance of either of them. So what? Duplicate case. Oh, you know what? Did we handle this? Oh. We did handle it. Oh, what a bananas. If I would have just scrolled up a little bit, I would have seen that. Okay, we didn't need to do that. Okay. Smiling Big, good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Hope everything is going well. All right. All right, so I think we have everything that we need for text entry. I guess let me test that real quick, just so that we don't get into... Right, so we want to do something like, you know, active scene dot get object, right, by name. Right, we want to basically do something similar to that. Doesn't look like my semicolon key is working for some reason. Pretty sure I added that. I did. It's right there. Guess I'm gonna have to debug that. So let's go to text box. What line was that? 688. See if we even hit that breakpoint. All right, so here, not even hitting the breakpoint. That's interesting. So let's have a look at key semicolon. So it's got its own key code. Platform, Windows. Let's take a look at the actual generation of the event. We don't have semicolon in there anywhere, so it must just be using the key as is. Input process key. Yeah, there's no special handling in here for it. Okay, so this makes me wonder if, you know, what actual key are we pressing here? So I guess that's where I'm going to have to look to see what's being generated. So that's what, 682 in platform Windows. 682. I guess, yeah, let's just set a breakpoint here. And this is actually going to wind up breaking on my tilde press as well. So I'm going to skip that. And then when I go to press this key, what am I actually pressing? 186. Okay. We're not holding any key codes or any modifier keys. So input process key. Master Snoods, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. Thank you for that. That notification was really loud and scared the crap out of me, but thank you so much for that. That support is huge. I really appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. Oh, are you from Spiro's channel? That's awesome. Well, welcome to the stream. I'm glad to have you here, and I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much. How are you doing tonight? We are debugging key presses right now, which is something I thought I was way past. Potham, this refactor I'm on has really gotten away from me. I'm 6 hours in when I only planned for 2 hours. Yeah, that's typical dev, right? W. Claytro, thank you so much for the Prime subscription. You guys actually started a hype train, which is kind of awesome. Oh, it's actually level 2. It bounced right to level 2. That's pretty awesome. That's a first. I haven't seen it go directly to level 2. Usually it starts off at level 1, so that's pretty sweet. Thank you for that. I really appreciate the support, guys. That means a lot. So Master Snoods with 10 more community gift subs. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that support. That's really huge. Thank you. That support means a lot to me right now. Definitely right now, for sure. I actually just got laid off yesterday, so that support is really helpful right now. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you. Someone in chat got the paycheck, yeah. No, seriously though, thank you very much. That is super helpful. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Did my Twitch UI just completely go bonkers? I think it did. I think the hype train is still going, but I now can't see it for some reason. Let's see. All-time high reached level 2 a minute ago. Okay, awesome. Spiro gave me a shout out. Shout out to Spiro for sure. I'm going to give him a shout out as well. Because for any of you who don't know who Spiro is, he is a streamer who is working on a project where he's basically taking, he's making the core of a game engine in Zig, compiling it to WebAssembly, and then using the HTML DOM as his front-end renderer. It's absolutely insane stuff, and I love every bit of it. Let me see. And he's actually currently doing a 72-hour stream right now, which is bonkers. Master Snoods, thank you so much for the additional subs. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That's huge. That helps me out a lot. Thank you so much. Level 6 hype train. I've never seen that before. BS Squidward, or B Squidward, thank you for the 20 community gift subs. Guys, this is awesome. I can't... Thank you. I don't even know how to react to that. Thank you, guys. Yeah, I really appreciate the support, guys. Thank you so much. I don't even know what to say. I just found you from Spiridon. How are you? I'm okay. Yeah, I found out yesterday that I was getting laid off from my job, so you know I'm looking for new employment while also doing this, and you know I just you know this is kind of what I'm doing in between applying for jobs and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm doing okay. I definitely can't complain. You know, there goes the shout out. There it goes. I don't know why it wouldn't work, but now it's working. But yeah, thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate those gifted subs. Thank you very much. And definitely, do you guys stream at all? Right on. What do you like to work on? So right now we're actually building a game engine from scratch using C and Vulkan as our initial rendering backend. So I'll give you guys the quick and dirty intro, right? So the engine that we're working on is called Kohi. We have a website that includes all the information about it. It's kohiengine.com. It's a free and open source engine. It's been in development now for almost 3 years. I've done the entire thing on video. So it started off as like a YouTube tutorial series, and then it's kind of evolved into a few different formats as we went to kind of see what worked, what didn't. And then eventually we started live streaming it here on Twitch last year. And so, yeah, basically the idea is that we are doing this as an educational resource for anybody that is looking to get into game engine development. So we're building the whole thing completely from the ground up, like file new, everything, right? And that includes our own custom build process, all the subsystems that go into the engine, everything. There are a few small things that we're using libraries for, like loading images and things like that, just because there's not really value in sitting there and decoding an image, right? But 99% of it is written from scratch. And so this shows a way to write a game engine. It's not necessarily the only way, certainly not the only way. And it's not necessarily always going to be the right way, because we like to try and experiment things here as well. It's cross-platform compatible, meaning it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. And also, it is free and open source Apache 2.0 license, which basically says if you want to use the code, all that I ask is that you say that you use the code, and that's it, right? And so there will never be any sort of royalties or any sort of licensing fees associated with this or any of the content on my YouTube ever. It's 100% free, all of it. I don't paywall anything because I feel like education should be free and freely available to those who want to learn, right? And so I don't paywall any of it. I put everything out there for free. So all the support that I get is purely, on the Patreon and stuff, it's purely optional, right? It doesn't buy you anything extra except for my appreciation, right? Because I want to keep the playing field level, right? If you do see I'll be here, my dude, I appreciate that. Linux mention, yes. So actually, for the last about year, I was streaming off of Arch Linux, right? Arch, by the way. But the problem is the NVIDIA drivers have just gotten increasingly crappy, and I had to kind of stop doing that. And I haven't really been able to get it as stable as I would like to be able to continue streaming on Linux, right? So I had to switch back to Windows for a time. But yeah, that's more or less where we're at with that, right? Master Snoods, thank you so much for the 5 community subs. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. That support is huge and it means a lot. I really, really appreciate that. You just started using Mint, so you feel the pain? Yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard that people are having a little bit better luck with the Debian distribution of the Linux drivers. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I'm thinking about blowing away my my Linux installation and trying that for a bit to see. Yeah, no, I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much. That really means a lot. And also a Hype Train level 8. Holy crap. I've never seen that before. That's definitely a record. For sure. You're a Debian evangelist for a few years now. Yeah. I've used Ubuntu a lot over the years as well. But I think I'm actually going to start trying like straight up Debian and see how that goes. Foo Force, thank you for the follow. Also, DocLock and DocLock, thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. Pop OS is amazing. I've heard good things about that. Haven't heard any problems with NVIDIA drivers. Okay, so that might be another way to go, right? Bookworm is supposed to be nice. Now that's one I haven't heard of. Is it Dude Man? First time chat. Welcome, by the way. Bad Komuk over on the YouTube side. Hello. Welcome. Let's see. Yeah, laid off and you're still here. You're a strong man. Can't imagine a guy with your knowledge being turned away. I mean, it happens to everybody, right? It's happening across the industry as a whole right now, unfortunately. Microsoft and Blizzard lost 1,900 people today. So, you know, it's something I'm experiencing right now, but I'm certainly not alone, unfortunately. Oh, Bookworm is the current Debian release. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. The last one I tried was Jammy Jellyfish, I want to say. I could never remember the Ubuntu code names. They upset you recently, so you switched to vanilla Debian for a while, but recently tried Mint for the first time and love the stability. So the thing about Mint that I like is that it uses Cinnamon, and Cinnamon isn't the most performant desktop environment, but the thing I really like about it is it has excellent support for mixed DPI display devices, which is what I have here. Because I have a 4K monitor and then I have regular 1080p monitors. And that's a hard thing to find support for, especially on X in Linux. You've used Mint since 2009. Tried a lot of others just to do it, but keep coming back. Yeah, I was actually on Arch for a while. I think I was on Arch for a year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And I really liked it. But the graphics driver situation is really annoying. And I even actually tried offloading the streaming onto a different PC, which I have over here on the side. And that helped some, but it still didn't fix the display issue problems that I was having. So I think I'm definitely going to have to distro hop a little bit and see what works, right? So, and I'm thinking of giving just regular Debian a try, just base Debian. Have I ever extensively tried Mac? So actually, the job that I just got laid off from, ironically, I used Mac on that for the last 2 years for development. So between that and the Mac that I have for porting this engine to Mac, yes. Am I streaming with Linux now? No, I have Windows as my development machine, and then my Mac is actually doing the streaming, right? Mac is a solid choice too. Yeah, I mean, I could try that at some point, I suppose. I could try that as well, but I'm actually using that to stream right now as well. So I've tried to separate them just to kind of keep, because if you think about it, doing graphics programming on the same machine that you're running OBS on is kind of like playing Russian roulette, right? Like it's not gonna end well, probably. The amount of times that I've crashed my GPU driver and then it just took down the entire stream and everything with it, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not great. So yeah, I try to avoid that. But yeah, that's kind of more or less where we're at, right? So the engine is completely open source and free, right? Oh wow, the hype train completed at level 9, 6%. That's definitely a record. Contributed a total of 51 sub gifts and 0 bits. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that. That really means a lot, guys. Thank you. I think I would use a Proxmox instance of something for that. That's something I've thought about trying too. I've heard good things about Proxmox, honestly. It's just something I haven't tried yet. The machine that I have here is definitely beefy enough to handle it. It's got 64 gigs of RAM and a 16-core processor, so it should definitely be able to handle it, right? I've heard bad things about streaming on Linux, but I might try soon just to feel the pain myself. So the thing I can say about that is I actually successfully did it for a while on NVIDIA using a Wayland desktop environment for a while, and it actually worked. And then I had to switch from that to Cinnamon because of, again, NVIDIA update broke it, right? And that was really what was starting to annoy me. That's the reason I kind of got away from it, because every time I would update my graphics drivers, which you have to do, it would just break it, right? But yeah, I was actually streaming on Wayland for a while. But yeah, Wayland's just not there yet, unfortunately. We have ads. So for those of you who are new to the channel and or are not subbed or whatnot, you might see ads coming up. We're served ads on Twitch once every 30 minutes for 90 seconds. So I just like to pause the stream so that nobody misses any content, right? Because nothing sucks more in a programming stream than something being explained, code being up on the screen, and then you not being able to see and hear what's going on, right? So I just like to pause the stream and wait for that. And it gives me a chance to hydrate too, which is important. So yeah, we've got about little over 30 seconds left on those ads, and then we can crack on. Let's see. Over on the YouTube side, I stick to Windows 10 purely because it's in support and has all the software I want. Yeah, I get that. I'm using Windows 11 right now, just because I need to make sure it runs on there. Nivy over on YouTube, hello. Welcome. How are you? Hope you're doing well. All right, so we're almost done with ads. And yep, ads are dead. All right, cool. So, you, sir, are a warrior. You just made the top of the Christmas list. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Is RAM usage on Windows 11 still bad? Not that I've seen. No, not really. I haven't really had any issues with it, for sure. The desktop Windows manager takes a little bit more GPU than I would prefer, but I have a 2080 Super, so it's not that bad. It doesn't hit it that hard. All right. But it's still Windows. There's that. Yeah, exactly. I much prefer working in a proper terminal versus PowerShell, right? But it is what it is. All right. So I want to know, what I want to know is basically what key that Windows thinks that we hit. So the key is 186, right? It should be the semicolon key, but for some reason that's not coming up. So let's see. Let's do input H. So the semicolon key is actually 59. And what did this say it was? $186. So I wonder what key that is. So 186. 187. So what that's going to be 0xBA. Which isn't in here anywhere. Let me check the good old Windows H. Really? Oh crap, it's probably in some included. Where are the actual key codes actually kept? Virtual key, where is all this crap kept? Win user. It's the OEM key. OEM 1. Really? All of these keys are weird. But these ones all actually work. This is the only one that's weird. Okay. I wonder if it's that way on the other platforms as well, which I can't unfortunately test at the moment. So I think what I'll do... is we'll have to just translate this, right? So right now we're basically passing through the keys as is. But if key is equal to VK OEM 1, then key is going to equal key semicolon. This is gross Windows keybind crap. Literally gross Windows keybind crap. All right, so before I can build that again, because this is Windows, I have to actually close the application. If this was Linux or Mac, it wouldn't care, but Windows does. Have I tried the new cross-platform PowerShell? That's actually what I'm using at the moment. But yeah, it's still PowerShell, right? I'm not a fan of it. I'd much rather have a bash terminal, right? All right, what kind of bananery is going on here? Oh dear. Did it include something that should... Yeah, it included WinUser. But it shouldn't have. Okay. So most of the other platforms, we actually do have to translate keys within the platform layer. Windows, so far I haven't had to do that, but it looks like I just found an exception to that rule. All right, so let's run this again. And I'm going to turn this off for a second. And switch back. So here we go. Yeah, we hit the breakpoint that time. So now we should have... Yeah, we have the ability to type that now. Okay. So like I said, there's going to be an effort to consolidate this stuff, but at least now we should be able to, type something dot command name, right? And so now what we actually have to do is make something that processes that. So that's going to have to be done in a few different steps is the way I'm thinking about it. So we're going to have a way to create an object in terms of the console. And it'll be a named object that just holds properties, right? Or potentially a pointer to something, I'm thinking. Or maybe it always holds a pointer to something. In fact, it should probably always be a pointer to something. So we can create an object, pass it a pointer to something, and then maybe indicate what that is, right? So, via some sort of metadata. So we could say, create console object of type number called A, for example, and then pass it a pointer to an integer somewhere, for example. And that way when we type the name of, the object, which would be A here, and we type it in the console, if it exists, it should output the value of that. or if we say a equals, a equals 2 or something like that, it should go ahead and assign that. And the advantage to doing that is we can then use this to like manipulate objects in the scene, and eventually maybe even have cascades of objects that we can then manipulate through the debug console. And that'll give us a way to, sort of edit stuff through the command line until we actually have an editor UI in place, right? Because that's kind of a ways off. So that's kind of the goal. Really need to get to the bottom of that too. All right, so we need to look at the console, which we've not looked at for quite a while. So the console itself is basically a command processor, more or less, right? We have what are called console consumers, which right now our debug console is one of those. So it can be written to and read from. And then we have the ability to update those consumers. And then whenever we do a console write line, like from our logging or something like that, it also outputs that to all console consumers. And that's how that stuff shows up both here and in our debug console, because the logger is also a console consumer. And so we also have the ability to register console commands, register and unregister them, and as well as execute. And this execute is basically where all the meat and potatoes of it are, where we have it's basically a string processor under the hood, right? So one example of this is kvar int set testvar 4. And so we kind of don't want to have to do it necessarily this way through a command all the time. It might be nice to just be able to say, var name equals something, and not have to use this command ahead of it. So that's kind of what we're going to be looking at. The biggest usage with RAM on Windows I've noticed is with Windows Defender constantly scanning. Yeah, I could believe that. Although I haven't really noticed that on my machine, but maybe that's just, I don't know. You're on Windows 10 though, so that might have something to do with it too. I'm on Windows 11 on this guy, so I'm not sure. All right. Master Snoods, thank you for the sub there. You had gifted a bunch of subs, but hadn't subbed yourself, I guess. I guess gift subs don't work that way, right? So yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so the API that I'm thinking about for this is we'll have something that returns a Boolean to indicate success or failure. And we'll do console object register. And we'll do a string, and we'll call this object name. We'll do a void pointer to object. And then we'll also do, and I'll have to define this, object type. All right. And so I'll define this here and then I'll move it later. Type def enumeration console object type. That's probably what I should use there. Right. Console object type. Console object type. And we'll have console, if I can spell it right, object type. We're only going to support a few types of numbers, right? So we're going to say an int 32 console object type uint 32 console object type, whoops, F32, right, for floats. I'm not going to bother with doubles because we don't really use those. Do I want to support strings? I don't think I do. I suppose I could. All right. Well, yeah, I guess that's fine. Object type string, right? That's going to be a little bit tricky, like when it comes to assignment, is the only thing I'm really worried about there. So it's going to rely on it being that's going to rely on it being a dynamically allocated string to be mutable. Which is where it gets weird. That's why I'm saying I don't know if I want to support that. Because you're technically going to have to pass a pointer to a string, which doesn't fit the void pointer, right? You know what? I'm going to do that as an enhancement later if we need it. The last one I'm going to do is struct. And the idea is that a struct can have properties of these. Right? So a struct on its own is basically doesn't really mean anything, right? What means something is the properties that it has inside of that. Right? Okay, so we register our console object. We also need the ability to unregister that. So we can call this unregister. And actually, I don't even think we don't really need any of this stuff, right? Because all we should really need is the name of that to unregister it. So the idea is if we want something exposed to the console, when we create that thing, whatever it is, we would register it with the console. And when we uncreate it, we unregister it, right? So we have that, but then we also need something to add properties in the case of a struct, right? So KAPI rather, B8 console object add property, right? And we're going to have a string object name and then we're going to have another string which is property name, and then property itself, and then console object type. Right, and that'll only be valid on structure type console objects. This makes sense in my head, anyway. And I guess we could have the ability to remove properties. I don't know if that really makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense or not. Let's see. Sidecode, good to see you. Welcome to the stream. Glad to have you here. I guess we could put it in, right? And if we don't use it, we don't use it. But we're in here defining all this stuff anyways. So let's just do remove property. I don't really think we're going to need that, but these should be the 4 things we need, right? So the ability to register an object and unregister it, and then add a property and remove a property. And then Do we want to include the size with this? Specifically this guy here. I don't think we need to. I don't think we need to do that. Okay, so let's roll with this for right now and start stubbing that out and see where we wind up. Right, so we'll come down here. I'll put this stuff at the bottom. I don't remember. Yeah, okay. So we don't need this, 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 this. So for this first one, if we don't have object or object name, then we're going to do a k error, and we're going to say console object register requires a valid pointer to object and object name, and return false. Right, otherwise we'll just return true down here for now, and we'll do any additional troubleshooting afterwards. So we can take this same block and put it for property, except in this case it's going to be property, object name, and property name. And I just realized I didn't not all of these. Whoops. So I need to do that, because that would be, whoops, that would be a bad thing. Right? So if we don't have those, then we have console object add property requires a valid pointer to property, property name, and object name. And then actually remove property. All we need is object name and property name. We don't actually need these other things. Right, so right. Okay. So unregister is just going to basically do this very similar thing. Except it doesn't check for object, just checks for object name. Right? And then property, it's going to be almost the same thing again. Right? Except we don't check for property. Right? Oh, and this is remove. Okay. So we need to think about how we're going to store this information, right? Because we basically need essentially what is a recursive table, right? A recursive lookup table. Writing Windows batch files after being on Linux for the last year has me all kinds of messed up. Yeah. I had to touch the batch files on this recently, and I didn't like it. It always feels dirty. Not that Bash is that much better, to be completely honest. Bash scripts are, they have their own interesting characteristics as well, we'll say. Okay, so we need to think about like the type of structure that we need. So what is a object and what is a property of an object, right? So I think property of an object really is just a console object itself in this case. So let's type def a struct. And I'm doing this kind of here in the context, right? We'll move all this stuff up after we're done. And we're going to call this console object, right? Console object. And a console object is going to have a name. And it's also going to have a size, right? Which is internal. We're going to figure that out by the console object type. And then it's also going to have a pointer to a block of memory, right? And that's going to be the actual underlying object that it has a handle to. And then, technically speaking, we are also going to have a struct console object. If I can spell it right, geez. Object array that we're going to call properties, right? And this is going to be a D array so that we can easily push to it and pop out of it and so forth. And like with a lot of other things, we're going to do this sort of the brute force approach first, right? And we're just going to get it working, and then we'll optimize it with things like hash table lookups and things like that. Because I'm thinking actually what might be a good thing for us to also have is like a U32 ID, right? Like a unique ID, or maybe even let's go with a U64 on that, right? Right? And then, actually, you know what? Let's actually just do that. Instead of an array of these things, right, we're going to do an array of U64s, which are also going to be, we're going to call this property IDs. And what we're going to do is we're going to have basically an array of these console objects. And we're going to have a hash table that is going to store the names of the objects. And then we'll look up the hash table itself to get the object. I suppose the name itself will actually be stored in the hash table, so we technically don't need that either. So we'll look it up by unique ID, which should be pretty fast, right? And then we'll also check its property IDs children, and we'll also obtain all of the sub-properties that way by ID. And that will be just a straight array lookup. The only issue with that is the naming of it is going to be a little bit weird. Because these properties would also have to be stored in a hash table as well. But technically you could have the same type of object stored multiple times. It would have the repeated property names if multiple of those structures exist, which in a scene they would. So they'd all have to be named independently. That gets a little bit hairy. Okay, you know what? I'm going to undo that. That could be an optimization that we revisit. Right? We're going to brute force it for now. We'll optimize it later. Let's see. I didn't mind batch files when I was Windows only. It's just all the syntax differences that's throwing me off. Exactly. I don't rate batch files that much anymore, so when I have to, it really throws me off. For sure. Okay, so this is what our console object is going to look like. So let's actually take this and we'll move it to the top, and we have ads. So since we have ads, for anybody that's new here, we like to pause the stream whenever ads come up on the Twitch side. I know YouTube ads are working a little bit different over there. But every 30 minutes on Twitch, we're given 90 seconds of ads, or I should say up to 90 seconds of ads. Because depending on where you are, you may or may not be served ads. Or you may be served only 30 seconds of ads, or maybe no ads at all. It varies based off of locale, region, platform, things like that. And basically, whatever ads there are to fill that slot get played. But long and short of it, we don't want people to miss content while ads are playing. So I like to pause the stream while those ads are running, and that way nobody misses anything, right? So we've got about a little under 30 seconds left to go on ads. And I'm actually going to hydrate a little bit more, come to think of it. All right, almost ready to crack on. Just a few seconds left here. All right. And I think we're good. Yep, ads are dead. All right. So, we have our console state here. We have our consumers and our registered commands. It looks like we're probably brute forcing that anyway, so we're just going to brute force this as well. The console is not something we need to be super fast right off the bat anyways, right? So let me actually put this here. So we've got the console object. Oh, you know what? We need to store the type with that, which I think is still down here. Or was that on the... Was that in the H file? I think it is. Yeah, so this is here. Yeah, so we can leave that there. Right, but we should store... I guess I don't need the size here then, actually, because we have the type. So, console object type. Right, that's really what we need. All right, so here we're going to say darray of registered console objects. And that's basically just going to be an array of these console objects. Just a flat array of them. Registered. Thought I spelled that wrong for a second. Objects. Okay, so we have that. So our max consumer count is 10. I don't think... That's a D array, so we're not going to include that in the initial memory requirement. We're just going to do basically this, right? So state pointer, registered objects equals D array create console object. And then on shutdown, we obviously have D array destroy state pointer registered objects. All right. Okay. So we don't need any of that. So let's get these things registered, and then we'll handle the actual command parser for handling these things. So let's see. How did we actually handle the registration? I don't remember. Make sure it doesn't already exist. Oh, I suppose I could do an assert, right? I suppose that makes sense. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Eklezim? I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you for the follow and welcome. I hope you're doing well tonight. I'm just going to let's see. I'm going to do this. Right? It's basically a copy of this anyways. Right, instead of command counts, object counts. Registered objects, object counts. This is going to be registered objects. Instead of command, this is going to be object name. So we check that, object name, and then we're going to say object already registered if it already exists. Oops. Object already registered. Let's call that console object, right? And let's put a little formatting around this. Okay, so if it already exists, we bleat about it and boot out. Console object, new object. So this is we want name is going to be string duplicate. And that's going to be the object name, right? So we're going to take a copy of that. That way we don't have to worry about the life cycle of the string. The type is just going to be the type. Let's see, the block is going to be block, right? We'll just use that. Whoops, I think it's object actually. And then we will do registered objects, new object, right? So that's the pattern there. And then let's see, we had register and then unregister. We just want this part. Did we do... Yeah, we do a return false by default if we don't find it. Okay. So, unregister. We'll find it, unregister it, return true if we find it. If we don't find it, then we will return false. Make sure it exists. Right? Again, this is going to be object counts, registered objects. And then we have registered objects again. Dot name, we check that against the object name. Object found. Oops. Remove it. So we'll do console object, popped object. So basically what we're doing here is the DArray pop at requires something to write to when we pop that. So we just have this local variable here that gets thrown out. And then we do registered objects here. So we just pop that from the array and return true. Okay, so that part is nice and easy. Our console object add property. The first part of that is we're going to have to actually get the object itself, right? So we need to make sure it exists. So we're basically going to take this same loop again, but modify it slightly. Make sure the object exists first, okay? And then this is not an error case. This means found the object. Now make sure a property with that name does not exist. Okay. So we'll need to set up a separate loop, and we'll say u32 property count equals darray length, and that's going to be, let's see, we actually should take a convenience pointer to this. So console object obj equals the address of state pointer registered objects sub I, and then this is going to be object.properties, right? And actually, we can do a check on this. We'll say if object properties, then we'll do this, right? Because actually what we should be doing when we create the object is we're going to set properties equal to 0. And we're only going to create that darray if we add a property, right? So if we have the properties, then we need to do the check. If we don't have properties, we don't have to run this check. So for u32j equals 0, j is less than property count plus plus j, right? And then we'll say this same check here. Right, so we'll do object properties sub j name, and we'll compare that against the property name. Right, so if that is found, then we will throw an error saying object named this thing already has a property named. I'll do that again. And then to that we'll pass object name, property name, and return false. Right? So that's how we'll handle not duplicating properties. All right, let's see. If properties. Okay, so at this point, if we don't have properties, at this point we're going to need to create it, right? So we can go ahead and put this under an else, and then say object properties equals darray create, and then this is going to be console object, right? Because properties are also objects. So we create that, and then we actually create the new property, which is just another object, right? And technically this could be recursive, right? You could have a struct within a struct within a struct that has properties, right? So we're going to do this same exact thing here with a couple tweaks. Right, so the new object, its name is going to be a duplication of the property name. We'll copy the type over as is. The block is going to be the, the property. Its properties array will also be zeroed, and then we will push object properties, new object. Makes sense. Cool. All right. Let me see. We got some chats over on the YouTube side, so let me just get caught up there. If I can get a decent view of the window. All right, so I I have confusion about materials in my custom engine. How should I make it? Should my material get shader variables in dynamic manners such as reflection? And what about custom shaders? Can you give me an overview of how materials should be done in general? And the second thing, 3D models, they take time on loading. What to do to load them faster? Should I convert them to binary files? If so, any resources to help how to do this? Okay, so deconstructing that for a second, I will answer. I'm actually going to take the 3D models question first because that's a little bit simpler to answer. So the way that I handle that in this engine is I actually do have a binary format for the mesh, which so I load up the mesh from whatever format it is that I use. Like in our case, it's OBJ, but eventually we'll support others. And then I have a proprietary internal mesh format that I can basically read and write straight from a binary file. And so I read in whatever vertex and index information, material information, all that kind of stuff. I read that into whatever my engine needs to know, that format. And then you just take that and you basically dump that whole thing into a binary file, right? And we actually have examples in this engine on how to do that. So yes, absolutely, you want to be loading binary versions of model data. You don't want to be loading like OBJs or Collada or GLTF or anything like that, right? You want to have a binary file format that you load from. Because if you don't have to do all that processing and you can just load it in as straight data, you're always going to be better off. So as far as materials go, we are actually still kind of working on that in this engine. But what we have now is, OBJ is just to get you off the ground. Exactly. We actually wrote our own OBJ parser. You don't have to do that. But yeah, that's what we did over on this side. So I would start with something simple like OBJs, right? But as far as materials are separate from shader variables in our case, right? Those two things should not overlap. And the reason for that is because you might have a material that could be used with several different shaders, right? What I do is I say this material is meant to be used with a specific shader, but it is up to the shader system to take, or a material system, however you want to set it up. It's up to that to take that structure of material data and convert it and import it into what it needs to do, and actually load that into the shader itself, right? It shouldn't be the responsibility of the material to do that. It should be your shader system that actually does that, right? Your shader system should be capable of taking in properties and translating them to what the layout that the shader requires, and do it that way. So for example, the way that we handle it here is I actually have like a metadata file that goes along with it called shader config files. And you don't have to do it this way. This is just the way that I did it to keep things very flexible. But the way that this does it is it basically outlines all of our properties that we have in the actual shader. So what our stages are, what our files for each one of those stages are, right? So vertex fragment, here's the vertex shader, here's the fragment shader. Whether we need depth test or write, cull mode, max number of instances that we need, things like that, right? Here's our attributes, the type of those, so we know how big they are, things like that, and our uniforms, and so forth, right? There's also, some of these actually use texture maps, right? So we have sampler 2Ds in there. And so we have this metadata file. We're not actually using reflection, right? We're using this metadata file to actually configure this. Eventually, we'll probably figure out reflection. We just haven't done it yet, right? Let's see. It bothers you to pass for every model shader uniforms to make your architecture messy. Thought it has to be a smarter way to be done. Yeah. So, like I said, you generally don't want your models and you don't want your materials ever worrying or knowing anything about shaders whatsoever, right? Those are concepts that should exist on their own separate from anything having to do with shaders, right? And the advantage to separating that out is, your shader is going to know what that format needs to be, right? So it should be able to take any form of data input, whether it be a material or whether it be some other type of input from your scene, like your projection matrices and things like that. And it should know how to apply that, right, internally. And the rest of the system shouldn't care. And so you definitely need to separate those concerns out, 100%. And the way that I do it is I actually have a renderer front end that's render API agnostic. And then you have a renderer back end, which is where all your render API stuff exists. So that's where, in our case, the Vulkan code exists, or OpenGL, or whatever API you're using. Put that stuff in the back end and keep your front end agnostic of whatever's going on in the back end, so that the rest of your engine doesn't have to worry about that stuff, right? So at some point we'll probably do like a high-level overview again of how we've kind of structured the engine. Tonight probably isn't the time to do that because we're most of the way through the stream tonight, but at some point I will give probably another overview of that. But yeah, that's kind of the high-level answer for that. Yeah, models and materials are like your input, right? They're your input data, but your input data shouldn't care about how it's being used, right? It should only care about what it is. Does Kohi use ECS? Nope, we don't. Eventually, we're going to have optional support through a plugin. But the idea is I want this engine to be structured in such a way where you're not forced into using any one paradigm, right? And ECS is one of those paradigms that I don't want to force on people, right? Because not every project needs an ECS. In fact, I would argue most small projects don't need an ECS. So we are going to make one, but it's going to be an external plugin that the game or application can choose to use if it wants to. It's hard to think about a material system in ECS. I would not go that route if I were you. Material nodes and a node graph is one thing, but there are ways to structure that where your material still doesn't care about the nodes, right? But yeah, I hope that makes sense on a large level. But ECS, I call that entity complication systems because that's what it tends to do, right? It tends to overcomplicate things. So yeah, I hope that helps. Okay, so in this case, we actually, when we create the new property and add it, this is actually where we want to return true, right? Because we've found that thing. If we've not found the thing, meaning we haven't found the object at this point, then we need to bleat about that, right? So k error console object not found, right? And we'll output that string, and that'll be object name, right? And we'll return false there. But we're also going to do, let's see. Yeah, I think that's it, right? So the only error that we should hit is if we don't find the object, or if we found the object, but the property name is duplicated. Otherwise, we should be fine. Okay. All right. So console object remove property, and I actually just thought of why we would want to do this. Because when we destroy well, I guess when we destroy an object, we should automatically destroy its properties, right? So I actually don't know if we need this. Because why would we remove a property? I guess I can go ahead and do it anyway. I'm just not thinking, I'm really not thinking we're going to use it, but I'll do it. So we have to make sure that the object exists first, obviously. And then I just realized this might actually be hard to make recursive. We might actually be able to handle that. Might be able to handle that internally. All right. So we want to make sure the object exists. And then if we find the object this time, and instead of throwing an error, we're going to remove it, right? Because we actually want to find that this time. So in this case, we'll do a console object, and we're going to call this popped property. And we'll do darray pop at, and that's going to be object, properties. And then the index is going to be, J. And then the value pointer is going to be the address of popped property. And then we'll return true, right? Because we don't care about the actual property that we popped. We just want to pop it, right? Although there actually is the name. The name. Actually, there are a couple things we need to do. So we need to do a string free on the popped property name. We can just cast away the const because we don't really care in this case. We don't care in this case because we're not modifying the string, we're destroying it, right? So we need to clean that up, and then if popped property has properties of its own, then we need to recursively say console object. Oh, wait a minute. You know what? Because what if that also has children? Let's make a recursive function to handle this. So static. Console object. No, console property destroy. Or should I just say, nah, I can do console object destroy. And to that, we'll do a console object and then we can just recursively do that. So we'll do this. Oh, this needs to be return type void. Okay, so we actually need to keep this here. Okay, so we don't want this part. We do want object name and object properties, right? And so if that exists, then we want to do a loop through that. So u32 length equals adds. So we have ads being served on Twitch once every 30 minutes for 90 seconds. So I'd just like to pause the stream whenever that happens, right? That way nobody misses any content, right? And I do see that YouTube has quite a few comments there, so I'm going to answer those as soon as we get out of the ad break, okay? Just so that the people on Twitch that are in ads don't miss it. I know the ad situation over on the YouTube side is a little bit different, so just bear with me for a minute. We'll be through these ads in about 45 seconds, and then we'll go from there, right? I'm going to take this opportunity to hydrate up. So get about 30 seconds left on the ads, and then I will go ahead and answer that, right? See that we have stuff on the Twitch side too, so I'll read those as well. All right, I think ads are done. Yep, ads are dead. Cool. All right, so over on the YouTube side, thank you, so informative. How do you learn that? Honestly, I learned it over the years, just doing it the wrong way a bunch of times and then getting it right, right? You try things, see if they work. If they don't work, you throw them out and you try something else, right? It's really just trial and error and doing some research, seeing how other people do it, taking a look at examples, saying what you like about it, what you don't like, pulling things from multiple examples, combining stuff, trying things, rinse and repeat, right? That's really how you learn it. Gilherme, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Hey, finally watching you live now that the semester is over. Awesome. Welcome to the stream. Good to have you here. Max, are you using anything to visualize your heap allocations? Not yet. I do want to do that once we have a little bit more of the UI established, actually. That is something that I definitely want to do, for sure. And also, like, visualizing things like memory fragmentation, too, would be good. And since we have our own allocator, we can actually do that, right? So, yes, that is something I definitely want to do, for sure. All right, over on the Twitch side, 6134, A31. The beard makes you look like the second coming of Odin. That's the first. That's the first time I've heard anything like that. That's hysterical. Thanks, I think. Tammin, I really feel rusty programming again. Why do you feel rusty? Have you been away from it for a while? I mean, I could certainly understand it in that case for sure. All right. So we'll get the length of the properties array here. So darray length, and that's going to be object properties, right? And then for u32, I equals 0, I is less than length plus I. And then for each of these properties, we also want to do console object destroy. And we're going to do the address of object properties sub I. All right, so that's recursive in that manner. And then we'll do darray destroy object properties, and then object properties equals 0, right? And then before we actually loop through that, let's see. So we have the object properties array, right? But we free the name. What else do we have in there? Is there anything else we need to clean up? We should probably set the block to 0, right? And then Really, that's it. That's the only thing we care about. Changing the type isn't really necessary, right? So, whoops. All right. So that is the console object destroy, right? So we'll just use that. That's recursive. We'll use that to destroy anything we need to do. So basically down here, when we find the property that we need to destroy, we do a console object destroy, passing the address of popped property. And that will clean up... Why does it keep doing that? All right. And so that will clean up the property that gets popped from the array. And we should be good to go on that. Cool. I think that covers all the bases. So we loop through each object. If that object has properties... Actually, wait a minute. We don't actually even... No, this is... Okay, this is just removing a property. Okay, so we find the property to remove, recursively destroy it. All right, perfect. So we return true in that case. If it doesn't have any properties, there's nothing to do. And then we don't do this either. So if we get to... Well, if we get here, actually, this is an error, right? So in this case, we're going to say property, whatever, not found on console object, whatever it's named, right? And I realize I spelled property wrong there, but we'll do object name, property name, right? And that'll be a return false. And then we'll change that, okay? So we have an error for that case if we don't find the property that's named there, and we also have an error if we don't find the object. Cool. I believe that covers all of our cases. So that's pretty cool. All right, now, what do we do with these things once they're registered? So right here we have this console command execute, and the way that this currently goes is, ooh, I forgot about that one. If strings are ever used as arguments, this will split improperly, because we split by space. So we probably need to switch up how that works, right? Because we sort of had that space-separated system, but if we have strings on that, that's going to completely break it. And we are going to have strings because now we're going to have console objects that could have strings as the name, right? So that's going to break things. So we need to rethink that for sure. Almost 4 months without touching code, you think? Actually, over 6 months, been doing some XAML here and there, but that doesn't really count. Do you not do it for your daily work? Or is it just this particular stuff that you're touching now that you haven't touched in a while? Strings, strings as such, not the problem, but strings with spaces are, yeah. Well, technically it's both, right? The way I'm thinking about it. Because right now it's like command, and then space, arg, right? So technically if we did this, like that would be bad, right? So yeah, really the whole thing, like commands itself, the syntax behind that needs to be changed. And so we probably need to like rethink how we're actually handling this stuff. I think once we've actually like figured out the commands and all that, let's see. Yeah, so we're using the string parts here. So yeah, this is going to have to be reworked because the command is basically the string part 0, right? Which is not going to be what we want to do. Because we don't necessarily just want to do a split on the string. We actually need to do proper parsing on this. So I think I'm going to change the way that console commands work. So instead of having command arg like this, I think we're going to go with something a little bit more standard that's like this, right? Where spaces don't really necessarily matter, right? You could have this or this. Let me uncomment that so you can see it. So, you could have something that looked like this if you really hate the world, right? But if we do it this way, we could then say, okay, the command is everything before the opening parenthesis, and then the arguments are contained in the opening parenthesis and closing parenthesis, separated by commas. And then we just trim each one of these, and we should be good. Because the trim operation should also cover that scenario. Right, so if it's like, so if it's taking this entire bit as the token, then basically what you would wind up with is just everything that's in these quotes. That's the way I'm thinking about implementing it. I think that's what we should be using anyways. But command arg is okay with the current code. Technically speaking, yes. So to give an idea there, so this with the current code is technically legal, right? But, if you did that, it would break it. So, yeah, that's more or less the issue that we're having. So I'm thinking of just switching the way that this syntax is interpreted. So if we're running a command, a command versus like a set or getting of a variable, right? So a command would have these guys existing, right? Or parentheses existing. So if we have these, then it's a command, and we process everything between those as arguments to that command. If we don't have those, say we have a line that's like the thing equals 1, which is a completely different thing, which again should be parsed into tokens that trib away spaces, right? Then this would be considered like a I guess we could say a statement, right, versus a function call. So in this case, we would want to say, okay, well, we've got an identifier here, and then we'll parse the next token to see what it is, right? In this case, it's equal, so we're assigning something to it. And then after that, we have a value, which technically should also be allowed to be this, right? And if thing 2 exists, then it should assign the value of thing 2 to thing 1. And then we should also have some type checking to say, are the two objects of this the same type? And if not, we bleat about it. So that is more or less what I'm thinking. So we basically need to follow two patterns of parsing. One pattern for commands, and I guess, technically speaking, each one of the arguments could be a statement. Because theoretically, could also have thing1 plus thing2 as an argument. Right, so everything up to this would be parsed as a single statement, right? And so if it happens to be a value, then cool. But otherwise, we need to parse this as a statement. So maybe what we need is like a parse command and a parse statement. And parse statement would take care of substrings like this, and also take care of things like this. And parse command would essentially call parse statement, right? So it would parse statement, run these, get some sort of result for each one, and then once it has that, pass the results of those to command. So yeah, I think that's more or less what I'm thinking. I might be overcomplicating the crap out of it, to be honest, but that's what I would like to have. Let's see. First time chat, A1M. Good night, guys. Thank you for the free knowledge. No problem. I appreciate that. Appreciate the kind words there. Of course, since it's your language, you can name things however you like, but I think the convention is expression, not statement. Yeah, you're right. Expression. I'm tired. Turing complete? Yeah, no, that's not happening. Yeah, expression is better, right? So I'm going to write some of this down. So need to refactor this to have two types of processing. A process, let's see, process command, which takes command name arg1 arg2 plus arg3 etc. and passes each argument through a process expression which either retrieves the value of an object / property or retrieves the value as is and passes it as an argument to the command. Example command example example expression right. Expressions can also just be parsed inline. Inline. And that will completely eliminate this issue up here at the top. So that's probably the next thing that we're going to tackle. All right. So, however, I do actually kind of have to get up early in the morning tomorrow to take care of some stuff. So I think this is where I'm going to end the stream for tonight. We made some decent progress, right? We have the ability to register objects and properties of those objects and do that recursively, I think. So we'll do a little bit of that in our, let me put a to-do here as well. To-do, add objects properties to simple scene during load, right? And that'll be our litmus test, right? We'll do this on the simple scene first. That way we can actually access all of those objects by name through the command console and manipulate them. So theoretically, what we should be able to do is like set the position or something like that, or set the light color or something like that, right? That's the goal. And of course, we'll need some side check. You got worried when I said, of course, we'll need some type checking. Well, the type checking is actually going to be dirt simple, right? Because we actually only define a couple of different types for these things, right? So where was that? I think it's in the header file, actually. So we have these console object types, and literally all I'm going to allow for this is an int, an unsigned int, a float, and a structure, right? And so structures could be nested, right? But that's it. I'm not going to allow strings for right now. Strings are a separate thing, right? I might actually literally have a separate method for add string property, because strings complicate things when you have to set them and stuff, right? You have to reallocate that memory, and so a void pointer is not going to work for that. But yeah. Turing complete so we can write kohi inside of kohi. That's hysterical. Am I looking for multivariable syntax? I mean, I don't know how fancy I'm going to get with this, right? But for now, I'm going to try and keep it somewhat simple, but I want the ability to edit. I want the ability to edit objects and properties of those objects, essentially, right? So that's the goal. All right. So you finished all your refactoring for the day 8.5 hours later, 6.5 hours after I was supposed to be done. Yeah, that's usually the way it goes, isn't it? So I'm going to do, instead of a refactor, I'm going to do a feature, and we're going to call this console objects. All right, so here's all the files that we edited tonight. Technically, we have fixes for other stuff in here too. Whatever. You know what? It's fine. So we added shadow fading to PBR shader, fixed inputs text box bugs, and work in progress. Oh no, actually technically we added console objects properties, work in progress, command, shoot, what's the word I need? My brain's getting tired. Expression. Right, and I'm going to push this up so that you guys can actually get this. So we're going to say origin feature console objects. All right, and by the way, part of what we might get from this is we might actually wind up with like a super lightweight like scripting language. Now that I'm thinking about it, I might actually be implementing a scripting language by accident. So I don't know. I don't know that I really want to use it that way, but we might actually be doing that by accident. But it's not going to be very robust, right? It's not going to have arrays and things like that. Okay, so I definitely know who I'm going to be raiding tonight. The man with the plan, Spiro, is who I'm going to raid tonight because he's an awesome, awesome individual. And I love the work that he's doing. And he is also a madman because he is doing a 72-hour stream. And I think he's still got, looks like 15 hours left on that. And I think he said +1, so 16 hours. So I'm going to go to bed, wake up in the morning, and he's still going to be streaming, which is absolutely insane. But yeah, that's who we're going to raid tonight. So yes, please join me in raiding his channel tonight. And I really appreciate you guys following me on both sides. Over on the YouTube side as well, I appreciate you guys. Really appreciate all the support tonight. Thank you again so much for that. And if you haven't already, feel free to toss me a follow on both YouTube and Twitch, just so that you don't miss any updates, right? I do release YouTube shorts every day on YouTube. So, all right, cool. I will see you guys later. Thank you for joining me, and peace.